And we're back again with the offensive line. Last week, we started a unit on theodicy with the question, where did evil come from? That was the first part of a question that you asked us, which was, why should I believe in a God who created so much evil, like disease, natural disasters, the Holocaust?
The second part of the question is what we hope to answer today, which is, why is there so much suffering in the world? Now, before we answer this question, let's first talk about the three things mentioned in the question. The first and second are disease and natural disasters. We can group these two things together under the category of natural evil. Romans 18:19-22 comes right after the Apostle Paul talks about how Christians will be glorified in the future. He says in verse 19 that all of creation is eagerly anticipating this glorification. Why? In verses 20 and 21, he says that creation was corrupted and will be set free from this corruption when Christians are glorified.
What this means is that every inch of God's creation has been tainted by sin and its effects. That's why there are things like hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes. That's why there are diseases. We hurt along with creation itself, which is anxiously longing to be renewed, all because of sin. The question also asks about the Holocaust. This is a separate category of sin in the world. Sometimes we need to understand is that in Genesis 3, after the fall of man, a number of things happened.
The original relationship between God and man was broken. That's the most obvious to see. That's the common understanding that people have. But also, the relationship between man and creation, and the relationship between man and fellow man was also broken. And it is because of the broken relationship between man and creation that there are things like natural disasters and disease. Just as the broken relationship between man and fellow man is how we get things like the Holocaust, things like sex trafficking, and these are what we would call moral evil.
In the world around us, it's easy to see the presence of both natural and moral evil. No one denies that they exist. The question then is why? If you remember from the last video when we talked about where evil comes from, we said that it does not come from God. Let me repeat that. Evil does not come from God. God did not create evil.
Understand that it's all from the Bible though. The Bible has all the answers to these questions, and that includes the one today. A fantastic place to turn to is the book of Job. That's actually what I'm taking our Thrive Ministry group through every other Tuesday. We're only in chapter 2, but we've already seen a ton of really cool things. The book of Job opens up with a description of the character of the man Job. It then goes into a conversation between God and Satan about this man, where Satan essentially challenges Job's character. And in the next scene, Job loses it all in a series of 4 tragedies that all happen on the same day.
First, some nomads steal Job's oxen and donkeys and then kills the servants tending to them. Then what's probably a description of lightning burned up his sheep and the servants watching over them. Then some raiders took his camels and killed his servants that were there. And then fourth and finally, which was probably the most tragic, was what sounds like tornadoes caused a house his children were living in to fall on top of them and kill them. 4 successive events alternating between moral sin and natural sin, moral sin and natural sin.
And in the next chapter, Job loses not just all that he had, but also his health. What we see throughout the rest of the book of Job is an assumption a lot of people make about suffering, which is that suffering happens only to people because they deserve it. In other words, it's karma. See, bad things happen to bad people, while good things happen to good people. Some really bad things happen to Job, so what that must mean is that Job did something really bad. That's the assumption. Only it's not correct. Job didn't do anything bad.
And we see this when a 5th person named Elihu enters the conversation. And he says something really profound. To him, Job's suffering is not a punishment for wrong. It isn't to punish Job, but to save. That's probably a crazy statement, but it's true. In Job 33, Elihu says that the sufferings Job has gone through are God speaking to Job to save his soul from death. Elihu's point is that Job's suffering is intended for his good. Job's view of God is how many view him today, an unforgiving master who gets angry at the slightest mistake. But Elihu's view of God is that he's a redeemer, he's a savior.
So the pain Job is experiencing, it's not a punishment, it's the pain of surgery. The reason why there's so much suffering in this world is because this world is broken between God and man, broken between nature and man, and broken with man and man. Suffering exists because there is evil in this world. But God is sovereign over everything, and that includes the evil that leads to suffering. The point of it all, it is to save our souls from death. What happens because of suffering? People realize their need for a savior.
In this sinful world, there are many who are in a bad state, and there's only one cure: Jesus Christ. That is why it is up to Christians to speak to those who are suffering and hurting and share with them the gospel, because that's the ultimate purpose of suffering. It's just like we concluded in the last video about evil. Why does evil exist? Why is there suffering in this world? For God's glory.
We hope that was encouraging to you. If you want more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe down below. Send us more questions for us to answer, and we promise to answer your questions. We hope today's and last week's videos were proof enough that we actually keep our promises.
We'll see you next week on the offensive line, where we teach you defense to prepare you for the best offense. In Job 33, Elihu says that the sufferings Job has gone through are God speaking to Job to save his soul.